afternoon, or evening, depending on which part of the globe you are joining us from. Welcome to the second virtual panel of the In Conversation with Click series, organized today under the theme, Planning the New Normal, How Has the Pandemic Changed the Higher Education Sector? I'm Dr. Narimane Hadj-Hamou, and I'm the founder and the CEO of the Center for Learning Innovations and Customized Knowledge Solutions, or as many people would know us as CLICS. I'm also honored to chair today's panel and have among us esteemed experts from different parts of the world. For those of you who may not have joined us in our first panel last Monday, the center has launched these as to provide in-depth discussion and insights about planning the future of higher education in light of the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. We aim at providing a platform to share experiences and good practices among our global community and open the door for further collaboration within and outside of the sector. I'm delighted to share with you that we have today participants from more than 488 countries. We're also broadcasting on our YouTube channel and on our Voice of Higher Education Facebook group, for those of you who were not able to register online. May I also take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to l'Agence des Universités Francophones, or AUF, our silver sponsor, for their support of this initiative, and give the floor for a few words to Mr. Hervé Sabourin, the regional director of AUF Moyen-Orient, to just give some insights about the organization. Do we have Mr. Sabourin with us? I think that we don't have Mr. Sabourin at the moment. Okay, so Mr. Sabourin just wanted to welcome everyone on behalf of AUF, Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie Moyen-Orient. Before we start, I would like to kindly remind our participants that throughout the panel, you will be able to interact with our panelists and ask questions that hopefully we will be able to address at the end of our session. Please do use the Q&A section as opposed to the chat box, because it would be very difficult for us to check the chat box. We will try our level best to address as many questions as we can. And I'm thankful to my dear friend and my dear colleague, Professor Yusra Mouzouri, who some of you may have met last week. She was the chair of our panel, who kindly offered to assist with handling the Q&A session. Now, without any further delay, I would like to introduce our panelists for today. I feel very humbled to be among such an elite group of experts, of eminent experts. And I know that time will not do justice in terms of introducing their wide experience, but I will try at least to give some background about them. First of all, I would like to introduce from the United States of America, Dr. Susan Aldridge. Dr. Aldridge, until very recently, has served as the president of Drexel University Online. She brings in years of experience working in multiple leadership positions and has served as a senior fellow at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, as well as serving as the president of the University of Maryland University Colleges, one of the largest public American universities. She has also acted as a vice chancellor for Global Campus of Troy University in Alabama and has received multiple recognitions and awards. So thank you for being here with us, Dr. Susan. My second panelist from Malaysia is Dr. Noor Azizi Ismail. Currently, Dr. Azizi is the vice chancellor of University of Malaysia, Kelantan. Prior to joining the university, Dr. Azizi was the Deputy Director General of Higher Education at the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. He has also served as a Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University of Utara, Malaysia, and where he also was the founding dean of the Graduate School of Business. Thank you, Dr. Noor Azizi, for being here with us today. Our third panelist is another inspirational leader from our region, from our part of the world, somebody I have known for a few years and that continues to inspire me every day and every time I meet her. Dr. Haifa Jamal Al-Lail is the president of Haifa University in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Prior to joining Haifa University in 1998, Dr. Haifa has served as the first dean of the girls campus at King Abdulaziz University, one of the leading universities in the Arab region. Dr. Haifa is the recipient also of many awards, including being awarded among the 1,000 women for the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you, Dr. Haifa, for being with us today. Our next panelist from Turkey is Professor Gursoy, I hope I pronounced the name properly, who serves as the Vice President at Istanbul Okan University in Turkey. Prof. Gunnar has assumed many administrative responsibilities ranging from heads of department to vice rector. He brings in years of experience in both the academic and professional worlds. He's been heavily involved with projects around educational system transformation, educational technologies, and distance education management. And he's currently managing an Erasmus project on gamification system development for financial literacy. Thank you, Professor Gursoy, for being here with us today. Our last panelist, and my dear friend and colleague from Morocco, is Professor Radouane Mrabet. The Professor Mrabet is the president of the University of Sidi Mohammed Abdullah Fas, one of the leading institutions in Morocco and in Africa. Professor Mrabet has also served as the president of the University of Mohammed V or Mohammed V, and as a director of NCIAS, an engineering school specialized in computer science. He is a member of the National Higher Education Coordination Council and its pedagogical commission, and the national coordinator of the network of Moroccan education schools and faculty. Professor Radouane Mrabet is also the president of UNESCO Chair on Lifelong Learning and the author of dozens of national and international publications. Thank you, Professor Mrabet, for being here with us today. Now, our theme today has been carefully crafted, and the aim was really not to talk about what institutions of higher learning have been doing on the short to medium term, but really looking at how the pandemic has transformed the higher education or will be transforming the higher education sector. It is believed that the sector has experienced or is experiencing three distinct time frames during this COVID or during this crisis. What we call, or we often refer to as the rescue stage. And this is pretty much what we all went to between March and June, when we had to urgently transition to remote emergency learning so that we can actually ensure continuity of learning and the health and safety of our community. The second phase through which institutions are undergoing, and which is, I think, the current stage in which we are, is what we really would look at as the recovery or the review stage. And that started for many of us at the end of the spring semester, or a bit earlier. And it really involves our work as institutions of higher education in preparing for the upcoming academic year. By evaluating the short and medium impacts that the pandemic has created on the sector, but also by reflecting on our internal practices and on planning different scenarios based on the risks that might emerge as the pandemic evolves. What we are going to be looking at in this panel is really the third phase, and that is really the renew and transformational phase of the higher education sector, which will be looking at how the higher education sector will transform beyond this academic year 2020 and 2021, rethinking universities and the value proposition that they will be offering. In our panel last week, for those of you who were with us, we addressed the short to medium impacts of the pandemic, the associated challenges. We discussed various ways in which higher education institutions have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic is believed to have created unprecedented disruption that have profound impact on the way the sector fundamentally operates. Today, there are more and more questions arising or emerging around the value of higher education, the ability of the sector to keep up with rapid changes, and the need to really reinvent ourselves and ensure we continue to remain relevant. Institutions of learning will need to really rethink the business models, the strategies, and fundamentally, how higher education will be delivered in the future. The aim of today is to discuss the potential long-term opportunities that may exist post the pandemic, and how the new normal would look like, and what sort of actions should the sector develop to adapt to the rapidly changing landscape while building resilience. So these are really what we're hoping or aspiring to achieve today. So I would like to start asking our panel, and I will hope to hear from all our panelists, a question around what are your top predictions for the future of higher education sector on the medium to long term post the COVID-19? And how do you see these predictions really disrupting the sector? And I would like to first hand over to Dr. Aldridge to hear her views. Dr. Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with so many distinguished colleagues from around the world. As we look at the future for higher education, in many ways, COVID-19 has really given us an opportunity to fast forward the fluidity with which we want to give our students opportunities for the future, where they can select how many face-to-face courses or online courses that they want to be taking in a term. So even a traditional student could mix and match some online or hybrid courses as well. So we're looking at new infrastructure that gives us that kind of fluid opportunity for our students. We're also looking at how the pandemic has impacted our ability to think through future healthcare scenarios from the architecture of our classrooms, our face-to-face classrooms. Is this a short-term fix or is it a long-term strategy from the architectural redesign and thought process for our classrooms? We're looking at revisiting quality standards for online coursework at a national and an accreditation level, and we're looking at where those regulatory bodies are and if they're really creating barriers for us in terms of serving our students for the future. We're looking at price factors and a number of other areas that I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk about later, as well as new opportunities for restructuring our degree programs around certificates that are embedded in degree programs and short-term education opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. May I ask actually the same question to our colleague, Professor Gunnar, around your prediction for the future of higher education on both the medium to long term phase?
Hello to everybody. Thank you for inviting me to the panel. First, I would like to introduce and define the current state. Actually, what we call it is a managerial perspective. It is the black swan VUCA world, which means that actually we are experiencing the unexpected. So we have to expect unexpected. And when it comes to the VUCA definition, it is in this term, we have high volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So within this context, actually, COVID-19 revealed the truth in what's happening in higher education, because if you look all over the globe, we are witnessing the inflation in universities. Number of universities have increased drastically. Regarding to and actually there is a scientific research on the grading inflation as well. So beyond that, actually, COVID-19 revealed that we have in higher education lack of investment on educational technologies. And also beyond that, the most important thing is we are witnessing lack of teaching culture, learning culture with the educational technologies. So that's what's revealed. So what are we expecting? Actually, if we look at from two perspectives, if we look at from educational technologies, we are going to witness much more smart, new educational solutions, technological solutions in the future, so that it's coming. On the other hand, if we look at from the university perspective, actually, what we will see that we will see more investment on educational technologies, and beyond that, actually, we are going to change the way we teach, because what we teach, because the learning style of the students and the demography have shifted. So we have to respect how they learn. So based on that, we have to change our system. So we are going to embed more educational technologies in higher education systems. The programs will change. So we will see the revisions in the program portfolios. Also, most of the time there is a dispute on whether we have the biggest campus, the large buildings and everything. But on the other hand, now we are talking about that we don't need them anymore. So we are questioning about the campus universities and another thing. So it definitely will shift the paradigm, understanding what the university is about. And beyond that, if you look at from educational technology perspective, individually customizable curriculums are coming. Because right now we are doing a mass kind of teaching, but eventually we have to understand that we have to respect the individual differences. So that's what we have to deal with. And also new terms will be introduced to our literature, like LXP, AI, adaptive micro-learning. And we are going to talk about that because learning management systems will be enhanced with the artificial intelligence solutions. So we are going to be able to provide learning experience platforms. And actually beyond that, we are going to be able to provide adaptive micro-learning. The last word that I can say that actually I'm against distance learning, distance teaching, distance education. I believe it's a close by education because we are so close to our students with the distance of their mobiles. So we will talk about all things throughout the panel. And again, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Professor Gursoy, for your input. And we're going to really have time to elaborate on the different points that you've mentioned. I'd like to hear now from Dr. Noor AZIZI on your prediction for the future of higher education post the COVID-19.
Thank you, Dr. and good day to everyone. I would like to touch on a few things here. First, probably on the teaching and learning. Which I think in the future will be blended learning, and the e-learning will remain as a big part of the learning post-COVID. That is one, and probably will go up to 50% or more, and there will also be an increase in demand for more personalized, self-paced, and also short-term education. That is what predict for the teaching and learning. In terms of research, based on my experience at our university and in the context of Malaysia, I think we need to look at for more balanced focus on applied versus fundamental research. For example, during the pandemic, there's a big cry for immediate impact type of research. And the third one is the higher expectation from the public for community engagement, especially for public universities like us. So, I would expect that the expectation will be much greater in the future. And the fourth one is on the financial challenges. In Malaysia, for example, most public universities are receiving less and less funding every year. And the following years, following this post-COVID, the cut in the funding is much greater. There is one, less funding, and also the less loss in quite significant in terms of the revenue from tuition fees due to the lower number of international students. Malaysia is one of the hub of education, so we rely on a big number of international students and also a big pressure for fee reduction from local students, which we need to address. And I definitely agree with Professor Gunnar on the physical infrastructure. We need to have less investment on the infrastructure. And finally, on the graduate employability. We know that there will be a big rise in unemployment, and the future of workforce is more of blended, a mix of permanent and gig workers. So how do we prepare our students for that purpose, you know, to get involved more on the gig economy, etc. So those are the 5 areas that hopefully I can have more time to deliberate further. That's all.
Thank you very
now.
much, Dr. Azizi. And it's nice to see that you're tackling the aspect also of community engagement and the role of institutions vis-a-vis of the community, which is an important element that hopefully we'll touch upon in more details later on. I'd like to give now the floor to Dr. Haifa, Jamal Al-Lail, to hear her views about the prediction of the future of higher education. Dr. Haifa, please.
Thank you, Dr. Narimane, for inviting me and to become part of this kind of a great panelist. I think my contribution and my intervention is really will revolve around the regulation. I want to just give introduction now, and then later on I will speak more in details. Is my prediction, and especially in our part of the world, I think very important for us to see that everything will be shifting toward not complete kind of a remote education or distant education or with the education technology. But I think the important things here is that how this landscape of higher education will be shifting from face-to-face into the education online teaching and learning, and what are the things that really govern this. Because in our part of the world till now, we don't have enough information or background, or at least infrastructure. I'm not talking about technological infrastructure. I'm talking about governance infrastructure that really help us to know exactly what are the regulation, the bylaws, I don't know what you call it, it's a mandate that help us really understand that the online education is really accepted by all. So I wanted really to explain more on that, but also a second part, which I will talk maybe if there is a chance, is the extracurriculum activity that help the student to have a campus life. So the student experience that most of the universities around the world really proud of giving to the student is really the campus life. So this is very important for us to think about. In the future is not going to be the same way that is happening now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haifa. And actually, you know, you've preceded my question around regulatory bodies and especially external quality assurance agencies, because they play a very important role in our part of the work. So we'll come back to this particular point later on. And it's spot on that the student experience is one of the things that is believed sometimes to be lost when moving online. And I'm sure that Dr. Aldridge, having worked for many years in an online university, would be able to share later on some insights on, you know, how in a way can we maintain and safeguard that student experience, which is something that is important in our sector. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Mrabet to give us his views on his prediction of the future of higher education.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Narimane, for your invitation to participate to this webinar. I want to say hello, bonjour, salam to all our 4 panelists and to all our public, which are participating from, you say, 48 countries. Yes, yes. It's a lot. Now I am here, I am in Fas, Morocco. It's the beginning of the afternoon. It's 2 p.m. here in Morocco, and it's sunny. It's good weather in Fas, in Morocco. To Dr. Narimane, to answer your first question, I want to say first that predicting, of course, the future is very difficult. And to predict the future in the long term is always risky. And I'll take the risk to be wrong. The long term for me is more than 10 years, a decade. I want to link the predictions of the higher education sector to the predictions related to the sector of IT in general, and the emergence of new technologies in telecommunication services, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, etc. I want also, it's important for me to link the predictions of the higher education sector to the evolution of the socio-economic environment of the country, of the particular region. The future for sure will not be the same for the developing countries like Morocco and the developed countries. But here there are some similarities between the two types of countries. For me, the campuses, as we know them, will remain essential for the teaching and learning environment, as well as for research and innovation. For instance, in Morocco, we will not have in the future university or curricula without campus, online, full online. We need a face-to-face between professors and teachers and students, and our national regulation is very strict on that. But of course, we will use the e-learning technologies and innovative pedagogy, and this innovative pedagogy and this e-learning technology will be ambient, which means for me that we will not discuss anymore it is or not necessary to use IT in the teaching and learning. It will be a normal thing. It's the same for research and innovation, which is nowadays normal and essential. One hard thing or issue remains unclear is how to assess our students properly online. As you may know, a lot of technologies exist, and several companies try to convince us that their products are suitable for all the situations. I predict that in most cases, in the future, thanks to advanced IT technologies, mainly IoT technologies, the online assessment will be reliable. But when it will be necessary, the universities will use the traditional on-campus assessment as we do it now. Dr. Narimane, for your second question, I want to say that the higher education sector in a country like Morocco will be much better in the future. Will more easily tackle our problems, which have lasting a long time, such as those related to quality assurance and the management of massification of the higher education sectors, which will remain at least for the next decade. Will be more effective in terms of graduation, the fight against dropping out, and in terms of adequacy of training with the job market. Will also be more efficient in research and innovation thanks to all these disruptive technologies, but also, and of course, our desire to move forward in the future. Thank you
very much, Dr. Mrabet. And obviously, I know that, as Dr. Radouane has mentioned, it's very difficult to predict, the unknown and predict the future. But we've also seen lots of reports being published by the World Bank and many other large organizations putting forecasts and predictions of what might happen in the medium to long-term phase of higher education. And I thought that it would be a great idea to, along with our panelists, we thought that it would be a great idea to also hear your views. So I'm gonna have a poll there. And I know that you might see many answers, but we would like to really ask you about which one of the following do you feel is the greatest opportunity the pandemic has presented to the higher education sector? So if you can just mention one of the greatest challenges that you feel that the pandemic has offered to the sector. We're going to have the poll for around 35 to 40 seconds. So please, if you can make sure that you just click on your choice. So just a few more seconds, and I will share the results with our panel list and our participants. Okay, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to end the poll. And we have the results, so we can see that the biggest winner is the adoption of blended and online learning, as basically predicted by many of our panelists, followed by, getting the faculty to really rethink their pedagogy are the two top ones. So I don't know if any one of our panelists would like to comment on the results, or we can go to the next poll. Any one of our colleagues? I think it's pretty much something we've expected as results. So the second question that we really wanted to get your views on is in terms of, we've heard a lot about the challenges, and really what is the one greatest challenge the sector will face in a post-pandemic environment? So, there might be other things, but among these, which one do you think is the greatest challenge that the sector may face? So a few more seconds. And I'm going to have to end the poll. So we can see financial stability and decline in funding is one of the greatest concerns that our participants feel. And I think that echoes what Dr. Aldridge was mentioning in her intervention, followed by perceived decrease in the value of higher education. And hopefully we'll tackle this particular point in a bit, and greater digital divide. Please, if any one of our panelists would like to add anything or comment on the results, or should we move to the next question to our panel? Okay. Now, obviously, we've heard from our esteemed panelists about their prediction about the future and the sort of implication on the sector. And my question would actually be to four out of our five panelists: how is really your institution planning for these new predictions, and for transformation to this new normal? What are the kind of actions you're taking? What has your university been doing to really ensure that it will build resilience and agility? So I'd like to invite first Dr. Haifa. If you can, Dr. Haifa, very briefly tell us what Ifat University is doing. You might need to, yes.
Okay. Important things in trying really to move in is we're strengthening our technological infrastructure. We tried really to increase our learning resources, digital learning resources. We started really looking at how we can look at how we do assessment for the teaching and learning over online, because this is very important. We don't know exactly the intended learning outcome in online versus really the face-to-face. So we wanted really to look at how we maximize this. And one of the very important things that the student really made us think about it is the length of the class itself. So it's very important for us to see how we can, the recurrence and the length of each should take into consideration. And very difficult factor that we had to deal with and we wanted really to avoid in the future is how tuition, okay, it differs in online than a regular classroom. And this kind of a debate was really, we had really to face during the pandemic and the switch from online, from face-to-face to online. So we want to prepare of how we can offer choices for students, because Dr. Narimane, I think, and all the panelists, that till now we don't have really a clear-cut regulation that help us. If I want to go online, I cannot at this moment, because this my degree will not be recognized by the ministry. So this was an important factor. I can do blended learning. I can offer some of the 60%, for example, of a classroom of a face-to-face, but that doesn't mean, okay, if really I didn't deliver the 100% of classes, then the minister will not recognize my degree. So that's the, I'm torn between really going with hyper model of between face-to-face and online, and between really going full-fledged online. So it's there are some restrictions, there are some constraints, but I'm trying to prepare myself for both scenario. So I think the experience that we went through made us think about all of this, and we're working on how to build these kind of things as we go along. I don't think that we are ready for full-fledged online degree, right, or online teaching and learning, but we have, okay, we accommodated this, but the accommodation of the online teaching happened quickly, and right, kind of a quick move didn't really help us structure these kind of syllabus, course description, course specification, what kind of a mode of delivery, how we can do it, and access to lab work, because we have some of the electrical and computer engineering courses that we needed really to look at how we can make it available to the students. We couldn't really invite them to come to the university and do their lab work. So we had really to work out these kind of things. And so I wanted really to avoid this in the future by making, if it's a hybrid model, then the campus, okay, sometimes it's important for students to come and do these kind of experiments, lab work. Yes. So these are the things that I worked on. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dr. Haifa, I just was wondering, how do you see your strategic plan as an institution being affected by actually the COVID-19 and all what is happening? Do you see that there is really a need to rethink your strategy as an institution?
Yes, I think one of the important things is financially, as Dr. Susan said, we know that there is some kind of a problem that we will face even in our part of the world. It's the idea that if I built really my financial model on this number of students, so this number of students will not come. Even as a continuing student or as a new student. So that's one of the things that financial strategy needed at this time, more than to be changed. The other thing is really like, how I can incorporate the idea of the teaching and at the same time of how the lifelong learning. So how I can really compensate the financial loss with another kind of services that I'm providing, in effect, okay, more than just only the regular, okay, degree, online degree courses that I'm offering. So I can really offer some online, okay, training courses that will help also the employability of my graduate, and at the same time also helps the community at large. So these are few kind of strategies that I want to really change in my planning and my strategic plan that we have till now, in order really to cope with whatever situation that we're really at this moment and we will face in the future, the near future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haifa. And we'll come back to the question around regulation and face-to-face presence, because I know many colleagues might not be from our part of the world and they might not be very familiar with the regulations. So we'll touch upon this in more details. I'd like to invite Dr. Mrabet to share with us what is his university doing to accommodate to the new normal and, you know, to respond to all these predictions that are happening.
Okay. Before answering your question, let me please introduce briefly my university.
Please.
In my city of Fez, you can find 4 universities. You will find, of course, the oldest one in the world, Al-Qarawiyyin University, founded in the year 859 by a woman, Fatima Al-Fihriya. There are also 2 very young and private universities which have less than 10 years. And you have my university, which was founded in 1975. It's also considered as a young university according to the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, which announced its new ranking of young universities on last Wednesday, June 24th. In this ranking, we are classified in the range 200-250 worldwide, first in Morocco, 10th in Africa, and 14 in the Arab world. For us, this is a great announcement and a good result, knowing that we have improved our rating in 4 of the 5 criteria of this ranking, mainly research, citation, and teaching. The University of Fez is a public university, which means here in Morocco that our funding comes from the government, and we don't ask our students for tuition fee. The training then is free, and the government also grants scholarships to students belonging to modest families. During this academic year, we have more than 88,000 students enrolled in more than 290 programs in almost all scientific fields. Our students are trained by over 1,600 permanent professors, and we have 57 research laboratories where more than 4,000 doctoral students carry out their research. Dr. Narimane, to answer your question, how are we planning for the transformation and for the new normal? First of all, I would like to say that several actions were being developed even before the start of the pandemic, aimed at to transform our universities in several areas. The pandemic has shown to me and to all our officials, to our board members, and to our, in general, to our professors, that we need to accelerate this transformation. We need to invest more money in our IT infrastructure and also in a vast training program for our faculty members to push them rapidly to adopt without hesitation the usage of the possibilities offered by the e-learning technologies. We will decide in a couple of days to launch what we call the pedagogical innovation roundtables, جلسات الابتكار البيداغوجي in Arabic. This is a large consultation which will involve almost all our faculty members. It will last for at least 1 semester, the next fall. At the end of this consultation, a white paper will be written and will be our roadmap for the future. At the same time, I am personally involved in the definition of the next Moroccan strategy, where other complementary points will be finalized and which are beyond the responsibility of a university as an institution. I want to add that in Morocco we are on the eve of a new and big evolution, which can be seen as a very important pedagogical innovation. We will deliver a new diploma for the students coming from the secondary schools, which will replace our old licence diploma. It's an 8-semester diploma, including a foundation year. The diverse curricula already designed will use the e-learning strategies and methodologies to deliver the courses. After the pandemic, we will redesign them, taking into account all what we have learned during this pandemic, and with more engaged faculty members. We'll go beyond what we had imagined it was possible to go. And what we will do for this new diploma will surely have consequences for the delivery of other curricula leading to other diploma like master's degree or engineering or business diploma. It's for short what I want to say about this this second question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Radouane. And it's interesting. We look forward to knowing after the semester, you know, the outcome of the pedagogical innovation roundtables.
Another webinar.
Inshallah, hopefully. Okay, so now what we would like to also hear from our colleague, Professor Gunnar, you know, what is your university doing in terms of adjusting to the new normal?
Actually, we have to look at the future in two periods. The first one is the crisis period, which is right now we are in part of it, and after post-crisis period. So we are looking from two perspectives. I mean, when the actually COVID-19 hit the population, so what we did actually, we closed the school and we sent all the students and the faculty members to their houses, to their homes, and we transformed and all 15,000 students and redefined it in our online system, and also added 5,383 courses online in 1 week. And totally we recorded, and we did it actually synchronous learning, and we recorded 16,000 hours of recording for the virtual classes, and totally 27,043 exams were executed through our system. So why I'm saying this? Because that's actually firefighting. So when we had the crisis, so we transformed everything. So the actually motto was, your health is as important as your education. So we created some sort of a balance and transformation. So that's actually, we did it in a way, in a good way to deal with it. But regarding to this strategy and everything, what I believe, because I'm a professor of management and finance, actually misalignment in the strategy cannot be fixed with the operational and tactical solutions. So in higher education, governance is the most important aspect to deal with this kind of issues. So what we did, actually, we started 2 years ago. So I'm responsible for the transformation of education, higher education system in my university, Istanbul Khan University. So what we have is, we have executed several foresights as workshops. Actually, we looked what's changing in the higher education sector. And based on that, we defined our priorities. The main priority was we have to invest in higher education technologies, because educational technology is a must. So what we did is a rule of thumb, we used blended learning for all of our courses, especially beginning from the English prep school. The The reason for that is because at the first day when the students joined our university, we try to change their learning culture. That's the most important thing. If you can change the learning culture of the students, and actually it pushes throughout the system. And afterwards, we executed several trainings and motivated our faculty members to use blended learning for their teaching standards. Plus, we focused on curriculum developments. We questioned one by one, program by program, their curriculum design. And also we invested in career development program because I mean in higher education, we have to provide not only curriculum activity, extracurriculum programs are also critical. So we invested heavily on career development program fully online. And some of the courses are communication, innovation, career planning, philosophy, and the most important thing is is a mandatory for everybody futurism. So we are looking for the future, especially for the younger generation. So that's why we looked at. And also for our research and for our workshops, we looked at and asked the question, how do our students learn? Because I mean, we are coming from totally different worlds. I mean, the way I learned is totally different the way they learn. So the thing is, so I cannot teach the way I have been taught. So that's why we made on research. So based on that, we revised all the online learning systems and everything. Regarding to quality, and actually the quality of education, which all of us are sensitive, and assessments and all these issues, accreditation. So that's why we created new rubrics, the main rubrics for online learning. So how should an instructor, the faculty member, should prepare a course, and how should they execute their teaching through online platforms? So that's the most important thing, because what we saw lately, I mean, when the COVID-19 hit the public, everybody actually uploaded their PowerPoints and taught the way they actually teach, you know, and this is not online teaching. This is not the way we should teach. So that's why we didn't let them to do it, because this way we asked them to add other things, assessments, self-assessments, and actually blogs, and actually we want them to include their design courses, simulation courses, and that type of thing. We have to elaborate, we have to expand the actually engagement of the student. If we can increase the engagement of the learners, and actually the problem is resolved. Because, so the first question we have to ask, what is the main outcome that we are expecting from higher education? In a general, program by program, it can vary, but in a higher education, we thought that there are two main competencies that we have to develop for our students. The first one is adaptation to change, because in research reveals that the current graduates will have at least 8 to 10 different careers throughout their lifetime. So if that's the case, they will be in the higher education system forever. So they have to learn to learn. So that's the one thing. And another thing is adaptation to change, because they will be facing many changes in their life. So I'm wrapping up. I can see from your eyes, I got the message. And the thing is, we focus on the last thing is the scenarios. So we developed 3 scenarios, and I will talk about in the next session. And based on those scenarios, we develop our system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Brunner. And I must say that I really like this idea that you are focusing on moving from emergency remote teaching to meaningful online learning experiences, where, you know, in our first stage of rescuing, we've just shifted, you know, whatever we were doing face-to-face online. And our curriculum, our courses were designed really for online learning delivery.
Absolutely.
And that is a very important element to consider later on when we will assess and evaluate the quality of what we've been doing. It takes years to develop a good online program and a support infrastructure, and this doesn't happen overnight. So it's good to see that, you know, your institution is, you know, have a forward thinking about, you know, how to move from ERT or emergency remote teaching to meaningful online learning experience. And hopefully Susan will share more of her experience with us on that. I would like to hear from Dr. Noor Azizi about what his institution is doing in terms of adapting to the new normal.
Thank you, Dr. Let me take about 30 seconds to introduce my institution. We are a very young university, second youngest public university in Malaysia, established in 2006, medium size, about 10,000 students. Our niche is on entrepreneurship. So 10% of our curriculum, we teach entrepreneurship across discipline. We have business and management, language, arts and humanities, plus science and technology. So, and our graduate employability is quite commendable. We reached 92% last year, and 30% of our students becoming a business, join business and creating job for others. And in terms of the transformation that we are expecting or currently doing, is that first I would like to touch on the teaching and learning. We are very lucky because we started e-learning since 2015, but it is optional. So when the pandemic started in March this year, we have no problem to shift from the conventional to the e-learning process. And due to that, we expect that post-COVID, at least 50% of the teaching delivery will be e-learning. So that will give us room to focus more on the work-based learning as well. And in terms of the regulation, in Malaysia, the accreditation agency is quite flexible. You know, they are allowing us to be, you know, to play around with the blended learning. We can have more e-learning now compared to the previous, the pre-COVID situation. And we are also exploring what we call a self-learning, self-paced and more personalized learning with the support of AI and big data. So we are hoping that within the next few years, we can achieve that plan. And plus, we are also exploring now what the use of augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality in our teaching. So because we have been there and we need to further improve the experience of our e-learning. And we are also ready in terms of the short-term education offerings, because we expect that will increase in the future. And also we are exploring a wider market through e-learning, because Malaysia is a small country. So we rely more on the foreign students to come and study in Malaysia. So in that regard, I would say that the value propositions of our education will change in the future. And the second one that I would like to touch on is in terms of the research. As I mentioned earlier, we tend to focus more on applied, what we call the innovation and problem solving type of research with immediate impact, versus long-term upstream and disruptive type of research. So the ratio would be like 60-40 or 70-30. And considering the financial challenges that we are facing and we continue to face in the future, we are also focusing on the commercialization of our research products. We are already in planning to have more startup and spin-off companies to bring in more money to universities, increase our consultation services. And in terms of the community engagement, I would say that it is one of our strengths, even before pre-COVID. And post-COVID, we are strengthening our engagement with the community, industry, and also the government agencies. And the blessing in disguise, I would say, is that we are good in terms of the poverty alleviation through entrepreneurship. And now the state government and in fact at the federal government also looking for us to assist them in terms of the socio-economic development of certain states that are lagging behind. And the fourth one is that I would like to touch on is that we are now going to run the university like a business entity. There's no other option. You know, the funding is getting less. We are more prudent in terms of spending. We're going to have a more diverse revenue streams from our business wing. We have our holding company. And in fact, to reduce costs, we are considering for our lecturers to work from home. You know, that there will be a certain percentage. It means that looking at the more agile workforce. And finally, I would like to touch on the graduate employability. Our focus is more on to nurture what we call a holistic, entrepreneurial, and balanced graduate, so that we can prepare our students, no matter what disciplines they are taking or they are studying, that they are ready to join the gig economy, they are ready to become a job creators, etc. So that is, I think, the 5 things that we are looking as a whole at our university, and we believe we can do that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azizi. And it's actually very interesting to hear that you're looking at new faculty recruitment models, and that might be one of the positive outcomes of this pandemic. Now, before I move to my next question, I would like to hear from Dr. Aldridge. And Dr. Aldridge, you have had the opportunity to work with many universities and leaders of higher education and in an online environment. And I would really want to hear your views on how do you see institutions adapting to the new learning. And I've been just having a look at the questions. Lots of colleagues are asking about, the student experience and, how can this be dealt with in an online environment. So maybe you can share your views on that.
Yes, thank you very much. So there are a couple of things that we're looking at the national level. So we're advocating at the national level for ensuring that we have broadband access and also limitations in terms of cost for data and so on, because when we build an infrastructure for our online students in a pandemic, honestly, we should be looking at the infrastructure that we need for all kinds of natural disasters that occur in our various countries, from hurricanes, tornadoes, snowstorms, all of these things. For our national security and for the education of our country, we need to have an infrastructure that allows our students to continue their education in spite of a lot of these natural disasters. So that's one issue in terms of infrastructure and advocating for increased funding. And second of all, I mentioned before, really looking at the national standards for online quality. We have a little concern that, the Zoom room or voice over PowerPoint or just the talking head lectures on an expensive LMS, on the short term is going to damage the reputation of online because they don't even fit the minimum standards that we would require for online. But at the national level, we've had accreditation standards for nearly 20 years for online, but a lot of very reputable universities don't follow them. And there has to be renewed interest in ensuring quality. So let me talk about the institutional level. I look at online learning as a greenhouse, if you will, for kind of percolating and trying new ideas on the campuses. But particularly in this post-pandemic environment, we need to have self-service websites. Our websites really need to be improved so students can get the information that they need from improved websites, from expanded services for chat, for online requests, video conferencing if they want to. We need to limit the wasted time that our students spend standing in line at desks in offices. Honestly, we shouldn't be doing that anyway. And that doesn't mean we're replacing the high touch for our students. What it means is that we're automating everything that we can so our staff can invest the high touch where our students really need it, on advising and support systems for them. So we should be automating our orientation sessions and putting them available virtually even before they come to our campuses. So we've invested a tremendous amount in free test drives about what an online course looks like to get our students ready to take online courses. And then we invest our staff time in really helping individually these students in areas where they need it. We must invest, as Professor Gunnar has said, in education technology. So often I consult with a number of universities and I speak around the world. Price becomes a big issue. Honestly, there are so many free sources for simulations, for added value gaming and so on that we can add into our courses from labs, science labs, math labs that are available for free. And I'm happy to provide those to Clicks and to Narimane if anybody's interested. Cost shouldn't be a reason to not have rich, robust, engaging courses for these students, or even enhancements for our students in a face-to-face or hybrid environment. They learn this way, and they need those added value enhancements. Also, 54%, according to the World Economic Forum, 54% of our companies are looking to retool and reskill in the next couple of years because of the impact that artificial intelligence, robotics, simulation are going to have in this environment. If we're not aligning ourselves with these companies to help them with retooling and reskilling, we are missing an enormous opportunity. So this bifurcation of, well, the technical schools offer the technical education, and the universities do research and theoretical perspectives. That's got to change a bit as we prepare these students for this technology-enhanced environment that they're going into. And finally, jobs, jobs, jobs. Our students are going into an environment we've never seen before, where they're really going to be challenged in terms of getting jobs when they graduate. And the more we can assure them that we're preparing them for the jobs that are going to be in the marketplace, the better off our institutions are going to be.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aldridge. And I know that many of our panelists are also taking some of the questions on the Q&A and answering certain questions because we're cautious of time, and I can't believe that time has been flying so quickly. But I would like to actually ask a quick question, and if I can have a really short and quick answer from our colleagues, is that in light of all what you've mentioned, as leaders in your own institutions, how are you ensuring, or what actions are you taking to make sure your institutions is building resilience in a very rapidly changing landscape? And I'd like to give the floor first to Professor DATO, very briefly, if you can tell us, and then I will hand over to Dr. AZIZI and Dr. Radouane. Please, Professor DATO.
Yes, actually, resilience depends on getting prepared for everybody. The thing is, it's a system. I mean, we define a university as the ecosystem of learning. So we have to look from different perspectives. And I told you before, and I would like to restate and explain a little bit more, because what we believe is that actually two main competencies that we have to focus on. The first one is adaptation to change for our graduates, and the other one is learning to learn. Because as Professor Susan mentioned about that, because I think employability is the key item. So because as we have to look from where we are heading, because our graduates will have at least 8 to 10 different careers throughout their lifetime, which means that they have to keep learning. So if that's the case, then when we are teaching either online, in class, whatever it is, actually we have to make sure that our students are learning to think. Our students are learning to express themselves. Our students are getting much more competent in innovative solutions to the problems, because if they memorize what we are teaching them, it's useless. I mean, but on the other hand, they have to be very open-minded, and especially in our system. Okay, so for the higher education resilience, so what should we do? The first and the most important thing is the faculty members, because I mean, in a general higher education, we are conservative. So that's because of the nature of the business. I mean, what we are doing. Everybody has their own unique way of teaching. But on the other hand, without disrupting the innovative and their own way of teaching, we are trying to show them another ways. We have to take them in our size. Actually, COVID-19 helped us in that respect. Because most of the things, there's a general common belief that everybody was thinking that distance education has a poor quality of education. So we have to see the students in our class, but that's not the case anymore. Because the thing is, if we can't do it, if that's the only way, now all the faculty members are realizing that, okay, this is a new way. That's for sure. After the crisis period, everybody will try to incorporate that part of experience into their teaching. But we have to do it in an organizational structure, and we have to do it in our way. And the other thing is, I'm wrapping up things. What I believe in, that actually competency-based badge education should complement our formal curriculums, formal diplomas. Diplomas are losing their values because with the rapid change in the field, we cannot, in higher education system, cope up with those developments. But we can cope up with them. We can provide the developments with the competency training, the badge training. So that's what we have done in our university. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gunnar. And in our last panel for this season, on July 13th, we will be talking about non-conventional degrees and micro-credentials in detail. So hopefully we'll touch upon that in details in the last panel for this season. Dr. Azizi, if you could very quickly tell us, what, from your view, what are you doing to build resilience within your institution?
My engagement, lots of engagement. During the pandemic, the first month, in particular the first 2 weeks, was very, very critical. And in fact, we have a meeting almost daily to coordinate things, and then we have lots and lots of engagement with the faculty members. But I consider myself lucky because we are a young university and 75% of our faculty members are below the age of 40. So they are quite flexible, even though we have like 10 to probably 15% who are resisting to the change, but through lots of engagement and a bit of force, I would say, almost everyone now, almost 100% are going for online and they are enjoying it. And what we do in our university is that we instill a very strong growth mindset, I would say. And another thing is that we go for quick wins as well. For example, we believe that crisis cultivate creativity. So during the 2 months of pandemic, at the beginning, we produced 7 products, research products that have immediate impact to the society. And within that 2 months, from 2, we finally end up with 7 products. So that, give kind of like winning materials to bring people together. And finally, I would touch on that we need to have a strong governance and structure, a clear line of reporting, proper and clear policies and procedures in place. So with that, I believe that we can embrace all the challenges that are coming to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azizi. And I think that your 2 points, all your points are valid, but I like that you highlighted the importance of governance structures and governance arrangements to be solid in place, and the importance of stakeholder engagement. So these are really 2 important elements to build resilience in my humble view. Professor Radouane, very quickly, and I'm cautious that we're really running out of time, and we have still a few questions that we would like to ask our esteemed panel. Dr. Radouane, can you unmute yourself, please?
Dr. Narimane, I want to say that we were already resilient in some degree. I want to stress that in any cases, we were prepared to shift in a couple of days our classical 45 years old university to a completely online university. We succeed to do so, which means that we already have human and technical potential. And this potential was quickly used thanks to the good leadership at all levels of management, at the level of our Ministry of Higher Education, at the level of the presidency of the universities, the directions of the faculties, and all the different entities within the faculties. For the future, for the near future, we'll work hard to build in a steady manner the new normal, and to be, of course, resilient. Of course, we will introduce in our reflection that the world, and Morocco is a part of the world, the world will face new type of risks, non-traditional risk. We need to learn the right lessons from this pandemic, and the higher education sector and the education sector as a whole will have the priority at Moroccan level. Is here in Morocco, knowing that in Morocco a long process have begun to design a new development model for our country, a model where education, health, and well-being of all the Moroccan citizens will be the core and objective of this in the long run. To finish answering this question, I want to say that our challenges are now clear, and we have the historical responsibilities to give the right answers without wasting time. And all higher education sector need to be resilient. And my university is part of this sector, and this issue will be central in our future pedagogical innovation roundtable, as I mentioned it before. I want to finish to say that the Moroccan strategy for the future, short and midterm, 3-5 years, is now under discussion in our Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. And what we can say at this moment, that this strategy has 4 pillars. The fourth one is development of the IT infrastructure inside the universities, especially public universities, because here we have the big number of students. We have a good IT infrastructure, but we need to enhance it enormously. The second pillar is to make affordable the internet access to all students. And before that, we need to be sure that our students have the necessary equipment, laptops, computer, and software. The third pillar, we need to revisit all our rules and regulation, especially which regulate how a curricula can be delivered, how assessment can be done, and other pedagogical matters. And the fourth and the last pillar is related how to value the work of our professor when this work is done remotely. We need to officially acknowledge the pedagogical innovation through the internal and national regulation. Dr. Narimane, thank you. Your micro.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Radouane, for giving us an insight, an overview about what's going on at the national level in Morocco. And my question to Dr. Haifa, and I think it's in line with many of the questions that our participants have asked, and maybe Dr. Radouane and Dr. AZIZI and Dr. Aldridge has slightly touched upon it. But Dr. Haifa, we all know that the new normal will require from universities to have a certain level of autonomy and flexibility to be able to rapidly respond and adapt to changes. How do you see the legal and regulatory framework within our part of the world supporting this?
This is a very important factor that really plays a major role in how we can really adapt to the change. So if I am really going to teach my student how to adapt, then I want the umbrella, the institution that really help with that kind of changes that they will, or flexibility that I need to build in. I think in most of the Arab world, I think we lack the independence in our institution in a way that will help us really act quickly to any kind of problems, any kind of change that happen. But that doesn't mean that we're not really have the ability really to produce good work or produce good results. I think with the pandemic that happened really made all of us clear that we need really to move quickly to another kind of mode of learning. And this kind of mode of learning, each one of us really started really to adopt with different kind of scale, different kind of ways, without really looking back at one size fits all. So this kind of this kind of movement made, I think, most of the officials here and everywhere in the Arab world really look at what should we do next, and how can, if I want to design my human capital for the 21st century and do the skilling and reskilling and looking at online education and look at all of this with the current regulation that we have, it's not going to help, because till now the civil service will not accept graduates with an online degree. And I think that very important thing, the product or the output of our universities, if it's not really accepted by the civil service, then the whole work will be not really legitimate. And I think the minister himself really announced that it's very important from now on that we will have a different kind of mode of learning, a different kind of institution. So we're moving even from government institution, most of the government institution, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia in particular, to a new models of institutions. So it's not going to be a government totally. It will be really kind of a private, non-profit with a government support. And that by itself started really, the regulations started just only this year. But the new regulation that is required, and nobody touched it so far, is the online education. And online education, if I want to really integrate it into any regulation that have at this moment, it won't work. We will need really to revamp our bylaws, articles of regulation and different, and look at the education as a different kind of methods, one size fits all, as I said. So I'm expecting that in the new norm and the new reality that we will face, that will face the Arab world, is really to have the ground rules that really will help education to flourish. And I think as most of our panelists spoken about how this kind of innovative circles, pedagogical circle, this we need before that, or maybe within that, innovative circles to really discuss the regulation in the 21st century's human capital.
Thank you, Dr. Haifa. So we really understand that one of the prerequisites to adjust to the new normal is really re-engineering our regulatory frameworks and reconsidering, our laws and maybe our standards and so forth. Dr. Aldridge, my question is to you. And being now in a different capacity, working with universities and colleges, if very briefly you could tell us if there was a recipe for institutions to build resilience, what would that recipe be?
Well, I think to Dr. Haifa's point, there is no one answer to that. But what I'm seeing right now is that the institutions are quite overwhelmed, and it's difficult for them to really think about how to differentiate themselves for the future. So I try to get them to focus on the 2 or 3 things that they're most known for, that they're really the best at, and build on that and match it to what the corporate environment needs. We're moving from just being degree granting institutions to becoming the academic partner for life, not just lifelong learning, but we want these students to think of us so they keep coming back when they need to retool and reskill. So if we're building our future institutions as the academic partner for life, it will not only help our students, but it will help us frame our relationship with these students and hopefully align ourselves so that we can help these companies and our governments move forward economically. If we don't focus on that first in terms of preparing students and jobs and helping our governments and our industries quickly to jumpstart our economies, then we're just going to elongate this scenario. So that may be a midterm resilience, but I think long-term it will serve us all well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aldridge. And I'm really cautious of time, and if our participants and our panelists will be generous to give us an additional 10 minutes, we could actually take few questions. But just before that, in a very brief few seconds, if I ask each one of you in few seconds to give one piece of advice to leaders of higher education to adapt to this new normal, what would that one advice be? So let's start with Dr. AZIZI, Noor AZIZI first, and then very briefly, please.
All right, thank you. I would say strong leadership, strong negotiation, leadership,
okay.
Leadership, strong negotiation skills, because we need to deal with various stakeholders, student, staff, and a good teamwork. You need to have a good team behind you to support. And I believe that with those three, strong leadership, strong negotiation, and teamwork, inshallah, we embrace all the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. AZIZI. Professor Gunnar, if you can, one piece of advice to leaders of higher education.
Governance system. Because the thing is, if higher education cannot be built on better strategies, we cannot revise it. And I love the terminology, academic partnership for life. Actually, based on that vision, we have to invest in technologies, and we have to invest in our future of our students.
Thank you. Professor Radouane?
Yes. I don't like to give advices, but my advice is that to say that the new normal is not a revolution, and we don't need to think of it as a revolution, but we have to work hard to transform our universities in such a way that our society sees this transformation as a sweet revolution.
Thank you very much, Prof. Radouane. Dr. Haifa.
My advice is to look at flexibility is the way to move forward. Without flexibility, we cannot really face the challenges that we will get in the new future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aldridge.
Take advantage of this opportunity with the pandemic to continue to further the enhancement of investments in technology and in the students of the future, and align ourselves with our governments and industry to make sure that we're preparing the workforce for the future.
Thank you very much. I've seen that we have lots of questions that came in. Many were answered by our panelists to participants, but there's two questions if we can quickly take. One is really around student readiness for the new normal. We've talked about institutions, but what about the students? So if one of our colleagues would like to touch upon, what should we be doing in terms of ensuring student readiness for the new normal? Anyone who would like, please, to address this point.
I can add a few words if you want.
Yes, please,
Actually, students are much more ready than we are. Because they are very open to new technologies and everything. For example, when we uploaded all the courses online, 52% of our students actually took the lessons from their mobiles, which means that they are ready. What we did in order to make them ready, we had many online support systems, and they will be able to understand how they are going to be able to use the system and the platforms and the courses and etc. At the same time, we have established online and call centers, help centers. So our students actually help the other students. But what I believe, students are already ready.
Anyone else who would like to comment on this point?
Yes, I know. I guess it's our students are ready for this new normal, and we need to help them to acquire the equipment and also the connection, to have a low, the cost of the connection low, but they are ready to go forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And there's many questions flying in around quality assurance, and this is actually our topic for next panel. So I'm sorry if we're not going to take the questions around quality dimensions, quality indicators, because we will be talking in details about that. I think we've touched upon regulatory bodies, and one question that came in is that what could regulators do, or what can we do as institutions to really overcome this barrier? Because technically, if regulators are not going to accept this new way of learning, what can we do? And I know it's a very difficult question, and maybe we might not have an answer here, but if anyone would like to respond to this.
Probably I get that question. In the context of Malaysia, we have a group of vice chancellors, and we have a meeting first with the Ministry of Higher Education. There will be a negotiation with that. And second is that we have a good negotiation with the Malaysian Qualification Agency. And through that discussion, I think our agency is very, very flexible. They are willing to, to give more freedom to the university to adapt to the new normal. So that's what I said. I mean, you just need some kind of negotiation between different parties, and I think that's the key.
Open dialogue and platform, and I think this is one of the things we're really witnessing during this particular period. So I think that with that, we're coming, I mean, you've made the job of trying to summarize all the key points of your intervention very difficult. And I don't think I'm going to dare to actually do that. But just what I can say, as to really wrap up our session is that while the pandemic has brought in many challenges and added layers of complexity and confusion maybe for some of us to the sector, there are long-term opportunities that have been created to transform our sector. And we should grasp those, from considering new business models we heard, new delivery models, new pedagogical approaches. We heard about new ways of engaging faculties, a faculty member, innovative pedagogies that leverage on technology. We maybe didn't touch upon internationalization and partnership and collaboration enough, but that's probably, there might be new models for collaboration that might be established as an opportunity post the COVID. What I think is important is that institutions will really need forward-thinking leadership to create a vision of what their university would look like after the COVID dangers are resolved based on their particular context. Regulatory bodies and external quality assurance agencies, like in the case of our region, will need to be more flexible and should enable new forms of non-traditional education, and work closely hand in hand with universities to support transformation and develop an aligned educational ecosystem. As Peter Drucker says, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. And we want to make sure that we're not acting with yesterday's logic post the COVID and go back to our old habits. I think with this, we have come to an end of our panel. I would like to thank our valuable panelists. I would like to thank Professor Yusra, my colleague Elena, who's been working very hard to put up these panels together. And I would like to invite you to join us next Monday for another series of our panel, in discussion with CLIC's panels around measuring the impact of emergency online teaching on the quality of education. Stay safe, stay blessed, and thank you to everyone. مع السلامة. السلام عليكم.
Thank you. مع السلامة. على خير.
Alaikum. Good evening.
Thank you for everyone.
مع السلامة.
Bye.
مع السلامة.